Isabella sat on the couch sipping her evening tea when her phone vibrated against the glass table. A message from an unknown number. Her brow furrowed as she opened it. Unknown number. I thought you should know. Below the text, a photo loaded. Lucas. Her husband. Smiling, relaxed, his arm draped over a woman's shoulder. They were at a resort, the sun casting a golden hue over their faces. The intimacy in their posture sent a chill through her veins. Her breath hitched. He was supposed to be away on a business trip. Her fingers hovered over the screen as the sender's words burned into her mind. Unknown number. I was at the same resort. I figured you deserved the truth. Isabella's heart pounded. Maybe there was a logical explanation. Maybe this was an old photo. She zoomed in. The timestamp in the corner crushed that hope. It was from yesterday. Her pulse roared in her ears as she scrolled. More messages, more images, screenshots of restaurant reservations under his name, transaction receipts from the hotel, a final. Text unknown. Number. They looked really comfortable together. Thought you should see for yourself. Her hands trembled. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The late nights, the sudden work emergencies, the way he had been distant lately. The gut feeling she had ignored for months was now undeniable. A hollow ache spread through her chest. Her fingers curled around the phone. Had she been living a lie? Every whispered, I love you. Every promise of devotion. Was it all just a well-crafted performance? The expensive cologne she had smelled on his shirts, the receipts for unexplained dinners, the way he had started guarding his phone. She had convinced herself she was overthinking. Now she felt like a fool. But heartbreak gave way to something sharper. Rage. She refused to be the oblivious wife, the one left in the dark while her husband enjoyed his secret life. Isabella wiped away a stray tear and sat up straight. If Lucas thought he could deceive her and walk away unscathed, he was sorely mistaken. Her fingers shook as she dialed his number. The call connected on the third ring. Lucas, casual tone. Hey babe, everything okay? She took a deep breath, steadying her voice. Who is she? Silence. A beat too long. Then, a forced chuckle. What are you talking about? She tightened her grip on the phone. I have pictures, Lucas. You, at a resort, with her. Don't lie to me. A sharp exhale on the other end. Then his tone changed, calm but defensive. Isabella, listen. It's not what it looks like. I was there for work. She's just a colleague? She cut in, venom lacing her voice. Because the way you're holding her doesn't scream business meeting. His sigh was almost theatrical. People take things out of context. Stop. Her voice was steel. I want the truth. More silence. Then he took the coward's route. You're overreacting. That was it. The final insult. Isabella felt a strange calm settle over her. She had given him a chance to come clean. He had chosen to lie. Fine. She wasn't going to sit back and play the role of the betrayed wife, waiting for an explanation that would never come. If he wouldn't confess, she would force him to face the truth. Isabella grabbed her car keys and stood. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Isabella had always prided herself on being a supportive wife, a loving mother, and a woman who could juggle work and home life seamlessly. Her freelance design career allowed her the flexibility to care for their son, Liam, while still pursuing her passion. She never questioned Lucas's devotion. He was a hard-working man, providing them with a comfortable life. While his job demanded frequent travel, he always assured her it was necessary for their future. She had built her world around their marriage, believing in its foundation. But as she sat staring at the message on her phone, a chilling realization settled in. Maybe she had been living in an illusion all along. Lucas had always been the kind of man who turned heads, a confident, well-dressed executive with a magnetic presence. When he spoke, people listened. That charisma was what had drawn Isabella to him years ago. But lately, that charm felt distant, like a rehearsed performance. His late nights at the office had become more frequent, and his once thoughtful gestures now seemed forced. She had noticed the shift. The way he avoided eye contact when she asked about his day, the perfunctory kisses that barely grazed her lips. The conversations that had once flowed effortlessly now felt like interrogations, ones he always managed to sidestep. When she had mentioned her concerns, he had laughed them off. "Work is just stressful right now, Isa. I'm doing this for, us." But the warmth in his voice had been missing. Isabella traced the rim of her coffee cup, recalling the days when Lucas had prioritized family time. Back then, weekends were sacred. Movie nights, Sunday brunch, spontaneous road trips. Now he was always busy. His phone never left his side. Text messages at odd hours. Emails he claimed were urgent. The scent of a new cologne she hadn't bought him. And then there were the expenses. Charges at upscale restaurants, boutique hotels, jewelry stores. Each time she questioned them, he had an answer. Business dinners, client meetings, gifts for company milestones. She had wanted to believe him, but doubt had begun to fester, growing roots in the quiet moments when he thought she wasn't paying attention. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Lucas had casually dropped the bombshell. "I'll be out of town next weekend," he had said between bites of steak. "Company's sending us on a team-building retreat." She had nodded absently, cutting her vegetables. "Where to?" "A resort a few hours away." That had made her pause. "A resort?" He had barely looked up. "Yeah, one of those fancy wellness places. The marketing team is calling it a girls' trip since most of them are women. Just some bonding activities, you know." Her fork had stilled. A girls' trip. But he was going? Something about the way he had said it had set her on edge. It was too nonchalant, too rehearsed. And when she had pressed for details, he had brushed them off with vague responses. Her gut had whispered that something wasn't right. For days, Isabella had wrestled with her thoughts. She wasn't the jealous type. She didn't believe in invading her husband's privacy. But the unease refused to fade. She had casually mentioned the retreat to one of Lucas's colleagues' wives. The woman had looked confused. "Retreat? I don't think my husband mentioned anything about that." That was all it had taken. A single thread unraveling. That night, when Lucas had left his phone unattended, she had fought the urge to look. Trust is the foundation of a marriage, she had told herself. But trust had limits. Her fingers had hovered over the screen before pressing down. The messages were there, brief, cryptic, but damning. A woman's name appearing too often. Flirty. Exchanges. Plans being made. She had felt her chest tighten. "I need proof." Then the message had arrived. A stranger's number. A text. "I thought you should know." Attached was the photo. Lucas laughing, arm around another woman. A timestamp that left no room for doubt. Her stomach had lurched. The carefully constructed world she had built was collapsing. She had read the words over and over, hoping they would somehow change. That it was a mistake. A cruel joke. But deep down, she had known. Her husband was having an affair. Isabella sat frozen, staring at the image that shattered her reality. Her mind replayed every moment. The love, the trust, the blind faith. Had it all been a lie? Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wasn't just heartbroken. She was furious. Her fingers tightened around the phone. If Lucas thought he could betray her and walk away unscathed, he was sorely mistaken. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Isabella sat at her desk, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating for only a second before she typed in her destination. A one-way ticket. A last-minute flight. Lucas had no idea. She had told him she had a business trip, a client meeting that had come up unexpectedly. He hadn't questioned it, hadn't even seemed concerned about her absence. That alone told her everything she needed to know. Her pulse pounded as she entered her payment details. The confirmation email appeared instantly. There was no turning back now. Her hands trembled as she closed her laptop. This wasn't just a trip, it was a mission. By the time she landed, she would be face to face with the truth. The humid air wrapped around her as she stepped off the plane, but the heat did little to thaw the ice in her veins. Isabella clutched her suitcase handle, scanning the lush landscape around the tropical resort. Palm trees swayed lazily in the breeze, waves lapped against the shore, and laughter echoed from the poolside bar. It was paradise. But for her, it was a battlefield. She adjusted her sunglasses, keeping her expression neutral. Lucas was somewhere here, basking in his deception. She wouldn't let him see her coming. Not yet. She started at the bar. The bartender, a young man with sun-kissed skin, polished a glass as he greeted her. "First time here?" he asked. Isabella forced a smile. "Something like that. Actually, I'm supposed to meet someone. Tall, dark hair, usually wears a silver watch. Maybe with a woman?" Recognition flashed in his eyes. He nodded. "Yeah, I've seen a guy like that. He comes in a lot, usually with the same lady." Her throat tightened. "What does she look like?" The bartender leaned against the counter. "Blonde, real pretty. They were here last night drinking cocktails, seemed cozy." Isabella swallowed the bile rising in her throat. "Cozy?" He hesitated before shrugging. "Let's just say they weren't exactly keeping things professional." A deep breath. A slow nod. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Next, she approached a group of vacationers lounging by the pool. "Excuse me," she said, feigning nonchalance. "I think my friend is staying here with his girlfriend. Have you seen a couple? Tall guy, dark hair, blonde woman?" A woman in a wide-brimmed hat glanced up. "Oh, them, they're adorable. They were here earlier feeding each other fruit by the cabanas." Adorable. The word made Isabella's stomach churn. She clenched her fists. It wasn't enough to hear it. She had to see it for herself. Back in her hotel room, Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets. Images of Lucas flickered through her mind. His whispered promises. The nights they had spent planning their future. The way he used to pull her close after a long day. Had any of it been real? When had she become the outsider in her own marriage? She closed her eyes, willing the tears to stay back. Crying wouldn't change what was happening. She had come here for proof, for closure, for justice. She spotted them near the beach. Lucas sat under a white canopy, shirt unbuttoned, golden tan glowing under the sunlight. Beside him a woman laughed. A blonde with sun-kissed skin, tossing her hair back as she leaned into him. Isabella's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might shatter. She watched as the woman reached across the table, fingers trailing over Lucas's hand, and he let her, smiling, relaxed, completely unaware that his wife stood just a few feet away, watching her world collapse. Her fingernails dug into her palms. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't paranoia. It was betrayal. The old Isabella would have walked away, packed her bags, left in silence. But that Isabella was gone. She wouldn't be another woman scorned, sobbing quietly in the shadows. No, this wouldn't end with Lucas getting away with it. This would end on her terms. A plan formed in her mind. A way to tear down the perfect illusion he had so carefully crafted. She would expose him, not just to her, to everyone. She spent the next few hours carefully orchestrating her move. She befriended the resort staff, casually slipping into conversation that she was Lucas's wife. Faces had changed at that. Sympathy, pity. Some had even looked away, as if ashamed to be part of the lie. Perfect. She made sure she knew his schedule, his favorite places. She arranged for a photographer, someone discreet, someone good. By tomorrow, Lucas's fairy tale would be over. The next evening, the resort hosted a sunset dinner by the beach, an event filled with executives, clients, and colleagues, and Lucas would be there. Dressed in a flowing red gown, Isabella stepped onto the sandy path leading to the dining area. The ocean breeze teased her hair, but the fire inside her burned hotter. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart didn't race with fear. This was power. She would not be the one to break. Lucas had no idea what was coming. But in mere moments he would learn the hard way. When you betray someone who has given you everything, you don't get to walk away unscathed. Laughter echoed through the lavish restaurant, glasses clinked in celebration, and the scent of expensive wine lingered in the air. Lucas sat at the center of it all, surrounded by colleagues basking in the glow of success. To another year of breaking records, his boss toasted, raising his glass. And to Lucas, one of our finest. A chorus of agreement. Followed, smiles exchanged, admiration evident. Lucas grinned, enjoying the moment, oblivious to the storm about to descend upon him. Unbeknownst to him, Isabella stood just outside the entrance, steadying her breath. Her fingers curled around the edges of her clutch, where the proof of his betrayal rested. Tonight wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. The moment she stepped inside, the air shifted. Conversations faltered. Forks paused midair. Heads turned, drawn to the woman in the striking red dress who walked with quiet determination. Lucas's laughter died in his throat. His spine stiffened, a flicker of unease flashing in his eyes. Isabella? His voice was barely above a whisper, but the disbelief in it was unmistakable. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. With each step, the weight of her presence pressed down on the room. Eyes darted between them, curiosity stirring. Lucas swallowed, hard shifting in his seat. What are you doing here? Isabella stopped just a few feet away, tilting her head slightly. Oh, don't let me interrupt. You were celebrating, weren't you? A small, knowing smile touched her lips. Please, continue. A nervous chuckle rippled through the table. Lucas's boss glanced between them, sensing the tension. Isabella. Lucas started again, his voice tight. We can talk about this. No, she interrupted, her voice smooth but firm. We'll talk, now. The hush that followed was deafening. Isabella's expression remained calm, but her eyes burned with fury. She reached into her clutch, pulling out her phone. With a simple tap, she turned the screen toward the table. There it was, a photograph of Lucas and Maya, entangled in an intimate embrace by the resort's pool. The timestamp was unmistakable, just last night. Gasps rippled through the guests. A waiter mid-step froze. "Lucas," Isabella's voice cut through the stunned silence. "How long were you planning to lie to me?" Murmurs spread, eyes flickering toward him. "Is this some kind of joke?" one colleague muttered. Lucas's boss frowned. "Lucas, what is this?" Lucas opened his mouth, but no words came. "It's not what it looks like," Lucas finally sputtered, panic creeping into his tone. "Isabella, please, just let me explain." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You mean you weren't on vacation with another woman? That you didn't lie to me about a work trip? That this—" She gestured to the photo, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Isn't exactly what it looks like?" Sweat beaded on Lucas's forehead. "She's just a friend. It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Isabella let out a bitter laugh. "So, when you were feeding her fruit by the cabana, when you were whispering in her ear, when you checked into the same room, was that a misunderstanding too?" Lucas's face paled. His colleagues exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some looked away as if witnessing a car crash they couldn't stop. "Isabella, please," he pleaded, voice cracking. "Not here. We can talk about this privately." "Privately?" Her voice sharpened. "You had no problem humiliating me in secret. Why should your embarrassment be private?" Then, the final blow. Isabella's gaze flickered past Lucas to the blonde woman sitting stiffly beside him. Maya had been silent this whole time, fingers gripping her wine glass so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Tell me, Maya," Isabella mused, voice deceptively soft. "Did he lie to you too? Or did you know exactly what you were doing?" Maya flinched. Lucas turned to her, eyes pleading. But Maya's resolve cracked. "I didn't know he was married," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Shock rippled through the table. "You didn't know?" Isabella's laugh was hollow. "Interesting, because I knew you. At least I thought I did." Confusion flickered across the guests' faces. Lucas's boss narrowed his eyes. "Wait, you know Maya?" Isabella nodded, her gaze never leaving the other woman. "Oh yes, we've met. She's the fiancée of Lucas's colleague, David." A stunned silence. Someone choked on their drink. Maya's face crumpled. "Oh my God," she breathed. Lucas froze. Because there it was, another layer to his betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a tangled web of deceit that now threatened to destroy more than just one relationship. The tension in the room became unbearable. Lucas's colleagues, once so eager to toast to his success, now regarded him with undisguised disgust. "You son of a—" one of them muttered. His boss shook his head, disappointment etched in his face. "Lucas, this is beyond unacceptable. You lied to your wife. You jeopardized another man's relationship. And this—" he gestured around the table. "This is who we trusted?" Maya shoved her chair back, stumbling as she stood. "I need to leave," she whispered, voice thick with regret. Lucas reached for her. "Maya, please, don't," she snapped, voice trembling. "Don't touch me." And then, she was gone. One by one, the others followed, leaving Lucas alone in his shame. Isabella watched him for a moment. The man she once adored now looked small, pathetic, stripped of charm, devoid of excuses, reduced to nothing more than a liar exposed in the harshest light. She had won, but it didn't feel like victory. There was no satisfaction in realizing the man she had built a life with was nothing more than a stranger, Lucas met her gaze, eyes pleading. Isabella, she exhaled slowly, voice void of emotion. I loved you. A pause. And I'll never make that mistake again. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving him behind in the wreckage of his own making. Lucas stood in the wreckage of his own making, his breath uneven, desperation clawing at his throat. He reached for Isabella, but she stepped back, her expression cold, unreadable. Isabella, please. His voice cracked, raw with regret. I made a mistake, one I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix. Just give me a chance, please. She tilted her head, studying the man she once loved. How quickly he had fallen, how pathetic he looked now, stripped of charm, void of excuses. You had a chance, she said, voice devoid of emotion. You had many chances, and every single time you chose her. His hands trembled. It wasn't about choosing, it... Stop. She cut him off, her patience gone. You're not sorry for what you did, Lucas. You're sorry you got caught. His face crumpled. I love you. Oh. Isabella exhaled, a slow, deliberate release of breath. Then, with a final glance, the kind that carried no lingering affection, no hesitation, she turned away. Lucas watched her go, his world shattering with every step she took. The night air was thick with the scent of salt and distant laughter. Isabella walked toward the resort exit, her heels clicking against the pavement, each step lighter than the last. She wasn't free yet, but this was the first step. The pain of betrayal still throbbed in her chest, but clarity replaced the chaos. For too long she had been drowning in lies, suffocating under the weight of deception. Not anymore. Her phone vibrated in her clutch. A message from her sister. I heard what happened. Say the word and I'll be on the next flight. A faint smile touched her lips. Support. Love. Things Lucas had stripped from her piece by piece. She typed back, I'll be okay. It's time I start over. And for the first time in weeks, she almost believed it. By morning, the confrontation had spread beyond the resort walls. A scandal of this magnitude couldn't be contained. Whispers followed her everywhere, at the hotel lobby, in the cafe, even as she checked out. Did you hear? That was her husband, the one who got exposed last night. I can't believe he did that to his wife, and with her of all people. Pitying glances, judgmental stares. Even strangers felt entitled to an opinion. Her phone buzzed with messages, some from friends expressing outrage, others from acquaintances, wanting details. But one message stood out. Lucas's mother. Isabella, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. Please don't shut me out because of his mistakes. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. Lucas had betrayed her, but not everyone in his life had. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked forward. The world could talk all it wanted. She had nothing to be ashamed of. The moment she stepped into the lawyer's office, reality solidified. This wasn't just emotional anymore. It was legal. It was final. Are you ready for this? The attorney asked, adjusting her glasses. Yes, Isabella replied without hesitation. Custody, assets, alimony. Every part of her life with Lucas was dissected on paper, reduced to numbers, signatures, and legal jargon. Given the circumstances, the lawyer continued, we can push for a strong settlement. His infidelity, the public humiliation, it all plays in your favor. Isabella nodded, absorbing each word. There was no joy in this, no victory. But there was justice. As she signed the first document, a single thought crossed her mind. He destroyed everything with a choice. Now, I'm making mine. While Isabella took control of her future, Lucas watched. And then the final blow. We're letting you go. Lucas's breath caught. You... What? It's best for the company. And frankly, after what happened, I don't see a future for you here. The weight of his actions pressed down, suffocating. He had lost Isabella, his reputation, now his career, everything he had built. Gone. And he had no one to blame but himself. Isabella stood before the mirror, but the woman staring back was no longer the same. The heartbreak, the humiliation, it had once defined her. Now, it was merely a chapter in her story, not the whole book. She ran a hand over her wrist where a faint tan line remained from the wedding ring she had discarded. It was strange how something so small had once symbolized a lifetime of promises, all of which had been broken. A deep breath filled her lungs. This wasn't the end. This was her rebirth. For the first time in years, she saw herself as more than Lucas's wife, more than someone's betrayed partner. She was a survivor, a woman who had stared betrayal in the face and refused to let it break her. And that, more than any revenge, was the ultimate victory. Late at night, Isabella sat on the edge of her bed, fingers tracing the rim of a wine. Glass love, she once believed, was about trust, a sacred bond, but Lucas had taught her otherwise. Betrayal wasn't just about the act of cheating. It was the lies, the manipulation, the slow erosion of everything real. She recalled every moment she had questioned herself, every time she had silenced that gnawing doubt in her gut. He wouldn't do that to me. We're stronger than that. But the truth had been there all along, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the moment she could no longer ignore it. A bitter smile curled her lips. She had loved deeply, blindly, and in return, she had been played like a fool. Never again. She raised her glass in a silent toast, not to love, not to heartbreak, but to the woman she had become. The next morning, as Isabella scrolled through old messages, she noticed something, patterns she had overlooked. The nights he came home late, the sudden work trips, the dismissive tone when she asked too many questions. And she had excused it all. That, she realized now, was the real betrayal. Her own willingness to accept less than she deserved. Never again. If love meant questioning her own worth, she wanted no part of it. If devotion required ignoring red flags, then she would rather walk alone. She wasn't bitter, just wiser. And wisdom came with a price. As she deleted the last of their shared photos, a weight lifted. She was done looking back. Lucas's downfall had been swift. His name, once respected, was now whispered with pity and disdain. The affair had not just ended his marriage. It had stained his reputation beyond repair. Even Maya had not escaped unscathed. The woman he had risked everything for now bore the same judgment he did. Her career suffered. Her name dragged through. Gossip. Her place in his world uncertain. Isabella knew this storm was of their own making. They had built their relationship on deceit, and now they drowned in the consequences. Did she pity them? No, but she understood now. Betrayal was never confined to two people. It left wreckage in its wake, touching lives in ways no one anticipated. And Lucas? He had destroyed everything for a fleeting thrill. And in the end, he had lost it all. Months later, as Isabella stepped into her new apartment, she paused at the threshold. No shared memories clung to these walls. No shadows of heartbreak loomed in the corners. This was hers. Entirely, completely, beautifully hers. She set her suitcase down, exhaling deeply. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her. Her story had once been about betrayal, about pain, about loss. Now it was about resilience, about strength, about moving forward. And as she looked out over the city skyline, a quiet certainty settled in her chest. She had survived, and that was just the beginning. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths of relationships and the secrets no one talks about, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Infidelity Whispers. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that will leave you speechless.